On today's episode, I spoke with Jack Appleby, who writes Future Social and has been in the social media and marketing space for over a decade. And in this episode, you're going to learn how social has changed from 2014 to 2024, how brands should think about narrative and series content, and he talks about the only two social media best practices that actually even exist, and a lot more. So let's dive right into this. So before we dive into anything social, which we'll get in depth here today, I want to give you a chance to just explain a little bit of the bullet points of your career, how you got to this point, what you're focused on now. Yeah, just a little bit about your journey as a marketer.
Bullet points. So I worked in advertising for 15 years on the agency side with the specialty in social media. So through agencies, I ran strategy for Beats by Dre, Verizon, Microsoft, the TV show Community, a whole bunch of video games. Kind of accidentally along that journey, I started writing about it through Twitter and LinkedIn. Eventually, accidentally became kind of a content creator and developed my own newsletter. And now I full time write and speak and teach social media strategy to something like 200,000 marketers.
That's nuts. Yeah. And one thing I want to ask you actually is around the social media, especially for your own personal social. Um, for your account, you generate a ton of buzz on certain topics where you'll have an opinion, and then there will definitely be people that disagree with you. Um, how do you navigate that? Like, how do you think through? I'm going to post what I think is true, and then I'm going to kindly work through that. But there are going to be some people that don't agree. How do you navigate that?
It's changed over the years. I think in my 20s, I was very unabashed about it and I just shared what I thought and did it. I was never callous. Like I never didn't care what people thought, but I wanted to share honestly. And I thought of my Twitter as more of a classroom. And it took me too long to realize it's the internet. If I write about someone or something, it's going to get back to them. So I very much pick and choose my moments now. I think it's I get put into the thought leader category quite a bit. And I get accused of being devil's advocate, which it's never been my strategy. I don't say things to rile people up. I just share my takes. But I've been on I've have a couple of stances I've been very public about. And for me, it's, do I believe it? Can I back it up? Do I think I have an educated viewpoint on this? And then for better or worse, I will kind of deal with whatever the industry says. I think something that makes it a little easier for me is usually if I see backlash on the internet over one of my marketing opinions, if I'm being really honest with you, it usually comes from junior talents. And then I get the more senior, the CEOs, the directors, the VPs privately DMing me with thank you for finally voicing this. Maybe we can finally win this argument. So, it's all about who you're trying to impress, and hopefully it's just yourself, and anyone else is.
It's a great point. There's obviously so many different audiences and viewpoints, things you're just never gonna. That's a huge blocker for a lot of people getting started, even brands or personal brands. I don't want to offend anybody, and I don't want the backlash, and I don't want to deal with the haters and stuff. But it's just probably going to happen if you post enough
Totally.
volume.
Totally. And that's where when people ask me about how I do it, why I do it, why I did it before it was my full-time job and how it affected my career, life, and all the things. Like the reason I started sharing my thoughts on the internet was because I was at the same agency for 5 years and I had a panic attack when I realized I knew no one else in advertising. So I started tweeting about advertising really just to connect with other professionals, other advertisers, maybe clients that I could bring in one day. And I just if I want to stand out, I should probably share my own original thoughts or thinking on other people's work because I can share more of that through a Twitter thread than I can in an interview. So
Yeah.
then big, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask how long you've actually been writing now, and how long you've been in social. Period.
Yeah. I mean, I was always a social media guy. I graduated high school in '06. I graduated college in 11. So I got into social media as my first job out of college. I was working on electronic art, social media. So on Battlefield, EA Sports, that kind of stuff. And sometime in there, I shifted I was always on Twitter, but I stopped writing about the emo journalism side job that I had and started writing about just my thoughts on marketing. So at this point, I'm probably 2024. I'm probably almost 10 years into writing on the internet about it. But it was always sporadic thoughts. There was no strategy to it other than to share my mind. Didn't even think about trying to monetize it till 2 years ago. Never took a brand deal till 2 years ago. Just like shared and connect with people and built an audience for myself.
Yeah, I wanted to chat through that. And the reason I ask how long you've been in it is because in that time, that's enough time where like big stuff has changed.
Mm.
Um, I want to know through your perspective, when you're looking back to 2014 or even before that, talk me through the core changes in social strategy from then to now.
For like a personal brand like me, or just like in the social strategy in general?
Yeah, maybe both of those things. We'll start with you, but I also want to kind of twist this into brand marketing as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I was always a writer over a visual guy. Like I'm a trained writer, so things like Twitter were great for me. And now I do everything possible to stay off of Twitter. Like even though that's where a core part of my audience is, I don't enjoy the platform under the Elon era. I found the negativity be quite bad. Um, because of the rise of video, I'm now starting to make video content for myself because frankly, those algorithms are too strong a recommendation. And I think I'm missing out by not making video content there. But the biggest thing that's changed my career, my income, my reach is the rise of newsletters. Like I have 70,000 newsletter subscribers. I have more newsletter subs than I have followers on any social platform, which is arguably a significantly more valuable follower because I'm right in their inbox and they'll read my long form writing. So like as a personal brand in the B2B space, that's been colossal for me that there's somewhere that houses long form that I can still distribute. On the brand strategy side of social, short form vertical video changed everything. And I think it's where something that I'm always careful about when I use that phrase is people think short form vertical and they think like 10, 15-second videos. I'm usually trying to push the limits on how long those videos. Like I have a basketball audience now where I have 80,000 followers following my like adult basketball comeback journey. All of those videos are 60 to 90 second, 60-second to 90-second narrative videos, not me just like trying to make like a boomerang length thing. But for all brands out there now, like if you're not making short form vertical, considering how the For You algorithms work on multiple social networks, you're basically missing out on the larger piece of the pie.
For sure. And let's go into the brand, the company brand part of social for the most of this because I think that's largely who's going to be interested
Mhm.
here is companies that kind of know we got to do this, but they fall into the trope of all right, well, I'm just going to push everything to my social my brand LinkedIn account, and then nobody
Mm.
sees it and they wonder why it's not working. So let's help those people out a little bit. For brands trying to create social content, what are some of the trends or patterns you've seen over the years that actually really get under your skin with social for brands?
The answer is in the question. The trend that gets under my skin is the brands that really focus on trends. Because for the most part, what I see are these brands where I think one of the biggest challenges in social media marketing right now is the youngest crop of social media marketers care more about social media than they care about marketing. And it shows in the content. They're more interested in the trend that they're part of than the brand that they actually represent. And what's happening is the brand content, it's getting engagement from a trend perspective, but they're not actually representing themselves and what someone who's going to purchase the product wants. When that should be the entire focus is how do you either make the brand that you represent as entertaining or educational as possible in a way that's very true to the brand. Like I wrote an article maybe like a year ago where I think the best thing brands can do for themselves is put them on like 30-day bans of no trend content to work on your original storytelling tactic.
I like it. Yeah, like the not everything has to be evergreen, but probably better off going leaning more that direction. And again, like I said, I think that the go-to for most brands is, "Oh, well, we'll just share all of our announcements. Anytime we
Mhm.
raise money or anytime we have a new blog post, we'll just push links." And then they wonder why that doesn't work. And so you've talked through in your content, well, you kind of need more of a narrative than that. You need to actually create whether it's the series of pieces that are all related or whether it's standalones that are just more engaging, really tell a story. Talk me through how you think through narrative for brands.
I think the I think with brands, a lot of times we think in like let's call it content counter approach. How many pieces of content are we getting out there in the world? And I was always more interested in making the one piece of content that someone really remembers or someone finds extremely valuable, 'cause I think that does a lot more for your brand. Um, and I think I behoove brands to really focus on, like, I think if you're thinking narrative content, you inherently drive more value. I think what we have to get excited about is how we drive that value. And that's always what I wonder is like, are we excited about being educational as much as we are tying ourselves to whatever silliness is on the internet right now?
Yeah, that makes sense. And kind of visualizing that out when you're looking at a brand that doesn't have a narrative or is not weaving any kind of story through, how does that look different than a brand that does do that? Or do you have any examples of brands that you think really crushed?
Brands that crush narrative. I've been so focused on the creator space recently. I don't have any recent ones. I think what's important with narrative doesn't have to be like beautiful 3 act storytelling. As much as like what you really got to do is be able to touch on a human emotion and how your brand is improving someone's life. And I want to see that come to life as much as possible and have people think through, are your social hooks hitting on that as strong as they possibly can? Like, does your social hook lead to, I get why I want this brand or product to be part of my life? Does it get to, oh, I need to follow this brand for more? Because I think one of the things that you ask, I mean, I remember when I was on the agency side, we used to tell the brands like, hey, we're not here to grow your following. We're here to make engaged viewers. And I'm like, that was kind of ridiculous. And it was very self-serving when like we all need to know how to also grow these accounts organically, especially in the current space. So I think that's one of the big values. Like if you're not doing that narrative based content or not consistently showing your audience why they need to follow you, you can get high engagement, but you're not going to get that consistent viewer.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to get lost in translation there. I think brands inherently know, okay, I got to do this, got to do that, whatever. But then how they actually visualize what that looks like for them, that gets lost. And this narrative, like weaving a story throughout, that can sound daunting because then you think every post has to be a part of this story that's going to
Mhm.
last like 3 years. Then that's impossible. That's just not going to.
Of course.
But where you're saying is just split it up. Just be valuable. Just have your story, have like your core tenets and things like that, and then hammer them and actually be valuable there. Is that an accurate way of kind of thinking through a more digestible way of weaving story through brand?
I think so. I mean, there's like the legendary story of like all of Nike briefs are like do the same thing again. And I think that's what they've been really good at. Is like Nike for decades upon decades has beat just do it into our heads in as many creative narrative based ways as possible. It's not that they're like the through line is the theme, not like it's like this like follow the bouncing ball chapter story. So that becomes like for the brands that have like their pillars well defined, or I hope they have their pillars well defined. How are you telling stories within those pillars? They can be one off stories. But you got whatever your content is, if it's not answering that, like, why should I follow you question, you just won't grow. And like one of the easy ways to fix that is by introducing narrative.
Yeah, time and time again, I see this too, where people, companies, whoever, they're just terrified of saying the same thing over and over, like you're saying. But that's actually what it takes.
Mhm.
Like in the olden days, when the exclamation point didn't even exist, the way that they would write out things of importance, they would just repeat the word like in line. So they would just say it 3 times to emphasize the importance. And that's kind of how I think through social or any content. You kind of have to repeat yourself because either most of your audience doesn't see the one time or they totally forget because we all just forget everything and we're mostly thinking about ourselves. Um,
Totally. I mean, I think it's a really important point that gets missed, especially in the agency brand relationships, because the agencies feel like they constantly got to deliver something new, almost to the point where even if the social strategy might recommend to keep hitting the same drum over and over and over and over and over again, they almost, because of the client relationship, feel compelled to bring something new. Whereas, like you look at like let's say like famous musicians on TikTok who are growing organically there, they're playing the same chorus of the song in 40 videos, going viral every time by adding a little twist to them, and then that song's going viral. And it's because they're willing to hit that same point every single time. And I think a lot of times brands are scared to like make the same content over and over again when like that might be the best strategy. Like if something works, you should be dissecting why it worked. You should be setting that if that's an evergreen post, posting that thing again probably 3 or 6 months from now because you'll get the same kind of results, if not significantly better results. and then to be developing new ideas that are strictly based on that content that performed.
Yeah, and then there could be other things even beyond the words that are making maybe it's just the emotion that you tapped into that you can
Mhm.
totally translate to some other completely different topic, but, yeah, I think there's a lot to be done on the analysis of post-published content and how you push that forward to other things. And now we're kind of like we're in the age of outsourced content because it's UGC is rampant. There's just so many ways to get content from other people. Walk me through how you think of in-house content creators. Like, what are the pros and cons of that approach as opposed to just spray and pray with UGC creators?
I mean, I think I wrote about this. Like, I genuinely think if you're starting a social team from scratch now, you don't start with a social media manager. You start with an in-house content creator, just because the types of content that are performing right now. That doesn't, y- as a brand, you can choose for yourself if that's someone who's on camera talent or if it's someone who's just more of a content creator slash video editor. Um, think most brands, especially if you have a more than one person social team, someone in your team should be an expert in both the strategy and the creation of short form videos. I said this up front. It's just too important. It's the easiest way to organically reach non followers because of how the for you feeds work. Um, I'm not going to say outsourcing doesn't work. You could argue my entire career was outsourced. I was at Addy. Um, a lot of that was pre TikTok, where there was less faith on the brand accounts. Um, the thing that I just hope everyone has is like whoever your expert is on social, whether they're sitting within your team or with an agency you hire, let them be experts in social. Let them do their thing.
Kind of one thought that I just had as you were talking through that is social media manager as a title, I think often just gets clumped as you're going to make everything and organize everything. And that could be what it is for some companies, but I almost wonder if the word manager is kind of like a hint that it's the project manager for social, and that maybe looks different than the content creator for social, like you're saying. And how do you think through like do you just totally disagree with that notion, or do you think that there's something to that?
Um, the social media manager title is so mucked up across this industry as far as what people do and don't do and the expectations that it's always gonna be really hard to pull out of it. I mean, so I came from a lot of video game marketing. The community managers for some of the video games that I worked on, the like who are like first 5 years of their career sat in-house at the game publishers, were incredible content creators. But their title was community manager. Then I've met people in other industries where like the team of one social teams, they're asked to do so much work, one of which is content. And inevitably they can't be great at all of it. And if you're gonna be great at one thing, I hope your brand's great at content and okay at project management, that of the most amazing project managers and analytics team in the world and make okay content. And I think one of the challenges, like a lot of people who are team of one social media managers, 90% of their time should be spent on content if they're a team of one. And with video becoming such a big part of that, if you've been at SMM for 5 years, 6 years, you got a lot of self education to do to make compelling video content. And like, if I'm starting a team, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. If I'm starting a new team, I'm probably taking the traditional social media manager responsibilities. I'm taking the organizational ones and giving them to a coordinator, somebody in the first 3 years of their career, and then spending the rest of my budget, whether it's manpower budget, whatever it might be, on whoever's going to make the content. And that's their only job is to make great content, not spend a lot of money on a do-all person who's going to equally distribute their time.
I got one more question for you, and then I'll give you a chance to kind of wrap things up with where people can find you. But I've heard you on I think a couple different places. You've shared that you think there are really just two best practices that actually exist for social media. What are those two so that we can all just focus on the timeless stuff?
Yeah, I mean, so listen, like I think we all Google social best practices more often than we'd admit because we feel like they change a lot. There's a lot of discourse around like the algorithms are changing, things are different, and new features and all that stuff. As long as I've worked in this space, like, and only reinforced when I got away from it and just started work focused on like research and writing about it, you can do almost every single thing wrong between the wrong size images, things accidentally getting cut off, black bars around stuff. as long as you get a really, really, truly strong social hook and you have a what is truly like a high value idea, whether it's entertaining or educational based for your audience, as long as it's a great hook and a high value idea that fits your product, which is a key part of this, get everything else wrong, you'll probably still succeed. But we see a lot of people focused on pixel pushing and editing and making sure the framing's perfect. I'm like, your ideas aren't even good enough to perform despite getting all that stuff right.
Yeah. Yeah. That I've seen this in the wild for sure.
Yeah.
And been guilty of that myself. Um, all right, let's wrap things up. I want to give you a chance to talk through where people can find you online, what you're most interested in right now, and what you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, so my newsletter, Future Social, publishes once a week, totally free, read by 70,000 marketers right now. Google Future Social, Jack Appleby, that'll come up. And then I'm also on LinkedIn and Twitter where I write every day about careers, marketing case studies, and social strategy. It's all under my name, Jack Appleby. It's the goofiest name in the world. Search me or Jappleby somewhere and you'll find it.